The RX 7900 series can power the next generation of displays like 8K ultra-wide or high refresh rate 8K displays above 60 Hz. Next generation RDNA 3 and a crisp 8K resolution.
Everything just works. It just works.
Thank you, Papa.
Oh, and there's the reroll.
This video is brought to you by us and the limited edition 2022 Disappointment PC t-shirt on store.gamersnexus.net. We're only making a few waves of this limited design, centered around the triumvirate of GPU manufacturers, each letting us down in their own unique and creative ways. The front uses a super vibrant design with each GPU carefully shaped to its manufacturer's colors, into one super GPU of doom. It includes visual artifacting effects around the designs, representative of the various driver and thermal issues. The back has a band-style tour date for each of the most disappointing aspects of the year. That includes everything from curiously egg-shaped icons to re-rolling dice, and everything in between. The shirts are available in 100% soft cotton or a very popular tri-blend, both printed with sustainable water-based inks. The best way to support GamersNexus and its special intros, in-depth testing, and big investment into reporting and journalism this past year is to grab one of these limited shirts on store.gamersnexus.net. These sell out fast every year, so click the link in the description below. This year there were some pretty good launches, like the Fractal Pop or the AMD 7950X, especially with Eco Mode. There were also other good launches, like the Steam Deck, for example, but we're not here to celebrate the good launches of 2022. We're here to talk about the most disappointing of 2022, like the lackluster video cards.
Thank you, Papa. Yeah.
And the calamitous product plans.
The GeForce RTX 4080 comes in 16GB and 12GB versions.
And then there were the mismarketed overpromises.
at a crisp 8K resolution.
There's a lot more than these GPUs though. This year we had the worst pre-builds we've ever worked with. A lot of them. It wasn't just products this year, though. This year had more impressive and varied controversies than we've ever covered in any year. For example, Newegg, when it sold us an already ARM-made motherboard, and then it didn't refund us when we pointed out the problems. What I'm hearing so far is either the policies are good intentioned and poorly executed, maybe in some cases, or some of the policies like checking customer history are coming in really late to a company that's 20 years old plus.
Yeah, so that's been in place.
Okay.
That has been in place. You know, I think.
So you're back to poor execution.
Well,
Yeah.
And then it continued into the collapse of Artesian Builds. Roll the clip.
Oh, and there's the re-roll.
And that was as they effectively scammed the customers and the employees. And then, of course, separate from that, there was the absence of EVGA from the GPU market. So we're not going to get through every disappointment that we talked about in 2022. We're not even going to get through all of them on the back of the shirt, which you can grab on store.gamersnexus.net if you want your own roadmap of the disappointments. This video, though, it's going to be a fun recap, walking through some of the more entertaining disappointments of 2022. So grab a drink and let's get started. The first disappointment we're talking about, although certainly not the first one for the year, is the AMD RX 6500 XT. The card was so universally hated because of its lane count. Reviews for this went live on January 19th of 2022, and even though it looks like it's got all the pins for the PCIe slot, it was actually only 4 lanes enabled, 4 PCIe Gen 4 lanes. This is when Gen 3 was still pretty prevalent, and it still is today. But here's an excerpt from why we hated it so much in our review. If you're on PCIe Gen 3, then I guess basically fuck you. They built and sold it at the same prices they might a year prior, when literally just existing was enough to sell. And that's because the MSRP for this card with 4 PCIe lanes was $200. If you're wondering how bad that is, it's worse than cards from 2016. AMD couldn't even do 8 lanes because AMD took a laptop GPU and strapped it to a PCB and called it a day. So at $200 and with 4 lanes, it was an insult for people, and it really set a grim tone for the rest of the year that the rest of the year didn't fail to deliver on, because one of the next things that happened to us was February 1st, we started posting about this motherboard we bought from Newegg that was sent through the RMA process, opted out of repair, came back, ended up with us, and well, we ended up posting a multi-part series about it. So just to recap, they sold us a motherboard with nice socket damage. They knew it had socket damage because there's an RMA ticket still strapped to the board, and we weren't even undercover. I used one of our normal business accounts, so we decided to go deeper into the rabbit hole, and we actually called Gigabyte's RMA department to ask about the ticket, because the ticket still has all the information on it, and this is what Gigabyte said.
It was sent to us by Newegg, sir.
Basically, Gigabyte told Newegg that it would cost $100 to fix the pin damage, at which point Newegg declined to pay for the fix, and then Gigabyte sent the board back to Newegg. Newegg then put the board on the shelf with the sticker still on it, and because of the GN curse, they sold it to us. Now, eventually, we did get refunded, but there was a period in there where we sent the motherboard in, they denied a refund, and then we had no motherboard and no money. So that was a suboptimal situation, and that's what prompted us flying out to Newegg HQ and sitting down in a boardroom with 4 executives. As part of that trip, though, we actually got one of my personal favorite videos of the year, which was not the Newegg interview, although that's published unedited if you want to see it, but rather when we stopped in at Micro Center unannounced. But we're not talking about appointing things here today. We're talking about disappointing things here today. So let's just skip that one. So after all this, Newegg started to make some major changes. They reached back out to several customers who had the same issue as us. They apparently resolved them. We still need to do a proper and full follow-up on it at some point, but it sounds like they're at least trying. But one company that wasn't trying too hard was actually ASRock. When it launched its Grift, does anyone remember it? The ASRock NFTs of this badge. Yes, the badge that looks like the type of forum badge you might have made in, say, the early 2000s when you were trying to look cool to people on internet forums. They sold them for a lot of money. ASRock started cashing in on the NFT craze early in the year, and ASRock posted a news article titled, quote, ASRock joins the metaverse with Phantom Gaming Evo NFT. ASRock announced that it would be selling 100 of these special NFTs, the ones that basically look like a PNG you might order on Fiverr for literally $5 for like 20 of them. They announced they'd be selling 100 of them, and they called them Pieces of Phantom Gaming Evo. And they said they'd launch the first 30 of their Pieces of Phantom Gaming Evo on January 28th at 0.1 Ethereum each. At the time, that was $255 for basically a picture of an ASRock logo. They called it a digital experience and said they were next generation collectibles. And once again, they're being sold for $200 each. ASRock said that it was going to be donating some unknown portion of the funds to its ASRock NFT fund that it says is for creators and artists. And again, with the collectibles selling at approximately $150 a piece, theoretically, there could be money in there, but they said they'd talk about their ASRock NFT fund more at a later date in a news article that, just checked today, we have not yet been able to locate. So this was a clear grift and cash grab at $120 each, and at that price, you'd be better off spending money on an ASRock motherboard and dealing with ASRock's BIOS and random memory topology changes across boards of the same model than you would be spending $80 each on an ASRock NFT. Let's go talk about some pre-builds. The pre-builds were just bad this year, but bad pre-builds, it's like a year-round thing. They're January to December. So we're going to get out the immensity of their ineptitude all at once and just talk about all the pre-builds in this section of the video. We had bad ones from MSI. Check this out, see if you can see this on camera. So, is that visible? Alienware, oh, this is gonna be bad. Sadly from Skytech, oh, did they glue that one? They actually glued one, holy. You can see the hot glue on there. HD15, you can see how it's bent. But there were a couple that were good, like Mangear's Vibe. Unfortunately, because it's good, we no longer have it. We gave it to our shirt printer instead. But pre-builds were popular because, especially in the beginning of the year, it was still so hard to get components, and the prices have been all over the place for CPUs, GPUs, and everything else. So I think a lot of people felt like they were gonna just give up on the dream of a DIY PC build for this year, buy something pre-built, hope for the best, and then maybe revisit the idea in a couple years. Sadly though, most pre-builds that we've worked on are not good. MSI, for example, shipped us a system that hit 100 degrees Celsius out of the box. After MSI, Skytech also sold us a computer that hit 100 degrees Celsius because these two fans were shipped facing the wrong way. And that's not really the bad part. So we bought it for $5,000. That makes it feel kind of bad. But $5,000, it was meant to be positioned against the Alienware one that's over there, and we're gonna get to in a minute. That thing was $5,000. Skytech's is $5,000. We were thinking, okay, let's show Alienware how it's supposed to be done. They install the fans backwards. We emailed the CTO, we said, do you have a test report for this computer? And they said, yes, here it is. It's running at 100 degrees Celsius. Are there any problems? That was the new problem. So that was just kind of tragic because Skytech we reviewed positively in the past, but here they just really fumbled it. Now, on the upside, Skytech has since contacted us and told us that it's working on improving its QC and its SOPs or standard operating procedures, and it does sound like they're making some good moves, unlike Alienware, which didn't ever talk to us at all after any of the reviews. But let's go talk about theirs a little bit. So, the R13, the R15 Alienware systems, these actually, we can just show this. So this is the new and improved high airflow model of the case. If we could just get a close-up of the airflow. It's right here. It's a good thing we have a lens that can zoom a lot. Can you see it? That's the airflow. If you move your finger too much, you block all the airflow in the case. Unblocked, blocked. And they managed to make their i9 CPU perform equivalently in our testing to an Intel i7 CPU. So you pay all the upcharge for an i9, and then it is built so phenomenally and impressively and competently that it runs the same as a CPU that's like $200 cheaper. So that's the Alienware box. We didn't have a good year for pre-builds. We're gonna keep trying though.
So I bought a boat. I know what you're thinking. That's crazy, but trust me, it's okay.
This was an insane story. Like, it's an actual story. It's not just a computer hardware review. And it's up there with our Principled Technologies interview and gives you a little bit of a glimpse of where I want to take GN's reporting as we continue to move into the future. Because this one, we really put in the effort. We talked to over a dozen Artesian Builds employees. We visited their offices. We coordinated with the former landlord and broker to get into the offices legally, in case you're watching Noah Katz, and film the inside of the offices. And then there's even more to the story. In the whole process though, we learned how ex-CEO Noah Katz had misused the money, some of it his parents' money and some of it from other investors within the company. He failed to pay his staff while spending money on a Triceratops skull instead. That's real. And he drove an otherwise wildly successful company straight into the ground, costing around 60 people their dream jobs in the process. Now, the team has split, so some of the former team members of Artesian went off to form Starforge Systems, which we've yet to look at. They're based in Texas. And then the other team members went to form Phoenix PCs in North Carolina. So there's two groups that were split from Artesian. And the Artesian story, it's still not done yet. We have a little more, but we're not ready to release that part of the story just yet.
Mission accomplished. We've essentially come and gone.
Okay, enough of all that. Let's go talk about the 3090 Ti. The 3090 Ti launched March 29th, and it had no MSRP. That was the problem. So the card was launched at a point where NVIDIA had just given up, and it was like, it is what it is. Good luck. And good luck indeed, because most of the partner models were over like $2,000. And 197 days later, the RTX 4090 launched, and it blew the 3090 Ti out of the water. So the difference was 75–80% in a lot of the games, performance improvement on the 4090 versus the most recent flagship Halo product, 3090 Ti, that had launched within half a year. That's pretty brutal. That's the real disappointment for the 3090 Ti, not to mention the fact that the 3090 Ti was a test vehicle for 4090s, so you're basically a beta tester if you bought it anyway. But within about 4 months of the 3090 Ti launching, it came down to $1,500. And within another couple months, it came down again to $1,000 to $1,100 as anticipation of the impending 40 series launch grew. So if you bought it, you got kind of screwed. It feels a little bad. At least at the $1,000 mark, you got a good deal for the VRAM capacity. Performance not bad at that price, but man, initial launch price, that was brutal. One of the other things we talked about this year though was transient testing. So we started adding a lot of power testing for our GPU suite, not just for power supplies. And it's been a great growth for the channel because Transients tells us all kinds of stuff about the power characteristics and the behaviors of video cards that we don't typically get an insight into. So that's been pretty revolutionary for our testing process, but on the downside, it's allowed us to see some of the horrors that were previously unseen. If you don't know it's there, it basically doesn't exist. But when you know it's there, that's when it becomes a problem. So for transients on GPUs, on some of the 30 series cards, 3090, 3090 Ti, but especially the 3090, we saw transients upwards of 2.5x, which means if you nominally see, say, 350 watts on a card, you might suddenly look at 700 plus for a microscopic transient spike that you can only really measure on an oscilloscope, but which is sufficient to knock the system offline. So that was one of the trends that we didn't like to see, was the massive transient spikes. Although the 4090, to its credit, really cleaned it up. It had excellent transient performance on the 4090 FE. But a lot of the other cards, they've been problematic this year. Okay, enough of the GPUs. Let's do some CPU talk and get into the contact frames that came out for Intel's CPU bending problem. So for the contact frames, we tested frames from 3 different companies, like Thermalright, and we also tested Thermal Grizzly's frames. And this was an interesting storyline because this was an exhibit in smaller companies having an opportunity to innovate in really cool ways because of a fault of a mega corporation. That's the downside. So Intel's design means that the elongated 12th and 13th gen CPUs get sort of a bend to them from the clamp points on the ILM. And the end result was you can get about an extra 7 degrees in our testing by flattening the CPU out. So it's kind of an oversight for the large companies that especially affects small form factor builders. But then on the upside, you get cool, small enthusiast type products like these where they innovate and they do something really cool and fix a major problem. But there's one more thing we need to talk about, and that's some of the CPUs. Fortunately, I'm gonna disappear into the closet of CPUs. The 4500 was a last effort Zen 2 cash grab by AMD. It was confusingly named. It was $130, and it got its ass kicked by the 12100F for like $100 and the 12400. So those were hugely disappointing to us because it really just sort of blew out the goodwill that AMD had earned. But at least the 7000 series performed okay. Okay.
You can literally see it.
Now we get into the rapid fire section for this. So Intel Arc GPU drivers, they're pretty disappointing at launch, but Intel's put in a lot of effort and they've actually had some major improvements the last couple months. So we're gonna be retesting those soon. But at launch, big letdown because the hardware was actually pretty good on Arc. It's just the drivers were failing to deliver, but that's an okay spot to be. Now EVGA exiting the GPU side of the industry was obviously also disappointing, but for different reasons. It wasn't like products that underperform or are bad. It was disappointing more in the true, genuine sense of the word, where it's more like, wow, that sucks. Not like, wow, that product is bad. But we have a huge upcoming separate video on that for sort of EVGA's finale. We were originally intending to publish it for December 25th. We pushed it back to get some really good polish on the video. Really excited about that one. So that'll be coming up in the next, I don't know, week or so at this point. We kept pushing it back because we wanted to make it better and better. But we'll leave the discussion of EVGA's exit for that video because it really goes in deep on it. Now, RTX 4080, 12 gigabyte, that was the biggest true disappointment this year. It's just, it was a weird one because NVIDIA unlaunched it. We've never seen a product get unlaunched before, at least not at this scale, by a company this massive. And of course, the 4070 Ti's are coming up soon. That's what the 4080 12 gigabyte became. And the price is lower as well from what we've seen in the rumors online at this point. So whether they can fix the problem of, I mean, it's really not much better if the 70 class card is like more expensive than the previous 80 series or even equivalent to whatever it ends up being priced at. It's going to be kind of hard to win that fight. But 4080, 12 gigabyte and 16 gigabyte, with the 12 being clearly problematic enough that NVIDIA unlaunched it, that was a pretty big letdown. But with those points behind us, and as I'm starting to hear fireworks go off for New Year's here, the last thing we wanted to say is just a massive thank you to the audience. Thank you for enabling us to do what we do. This isn't pandering. I mean, genuinely, this past year was probably some of the best content we've ever produced. And just a couple examples, the burning cables, 12-volt high power deep dive we did, I'm really proud of the work that the team did on that entire series, and I think we knocked it out of the park. It was pretty damn cool what we were able to pull off, and the equipment we purchased to do it, we really got value out of it. We got to see the impact of quality testing equipment, good procedures, good teamwork, and that was exciting to me, and I think for the rest of the team as well. Other stuff we've done, the Artesian investigation was just really fun and different for us. It was more in the field reporting, which I respect the hell out of, and we want to do some more of that into the next year as well, now that travel's kind of more normal again for the rest of the world. And we have more huge videos coming up too, where we're starting to mix in some more creative reporting and journalism elements alongside standard reviews. We've always done reporting and journalism, but it's normally been sort of relegated to news reporting in the field with the occasional feature piece report. But now it's going more into the feature piece report category. We're able to get out there, talk to interesting people, do profiles on companies, and talk about who are the actual designers at those companies. That's all the stuff we have in store for you coming up in 2023. It's going to add, I think, a new sort of angle or aspect to computer hardware, where our goal for this year, and we trialed this with Height, with that coverage we did of Height, but really in a small way, and we're doing it with EVGA. But what you're going to see is we're trying to show you more of who are the people making the products that you actually like. Because the part that you don't see publicly is a lot of times it's really just one or two people driving a lot of the decisions for something like a case or a cooler or whatever. GPU is a different story, but it's those individuals who are really driving stuff. We want to start bringing a spotlight to them to show some more of here's how the industry actually works, and here's the stuff that you like a lot, and who made them. Anyway, that's the plan in the shortest possible form, but thank you again for watching. Thanks for subscribing, supporting. You don't have to buy the shirt, but if you do, we massively appreciate it. They're on the store, so store.gamersnexus.net. If you want the front and the 2022 tour dates back version of the shirt, we will have a front-only version at a later date, but they're shipping in waves if you want the front and the back with the 2022 dates, and that's basically going to sort of fund our endeavors into the next couple of months here as we start booking travel plans and figuring out what we're reporting on. And I have a couple of really cool stories that I can't quite talk about yet, and I think I haven't. I'm pretty sure they're exclusive at this point. So anyway, been a lot of fun 2022. Looking forward to 23. Thanks everyone. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus, and we'll see you all next time.